Russia has released footage of its latest war games in a strong signal to the West ahead of talks between Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden in Geneva. The video comes a day before the two leaders meet for a private conversation regarding cyber attacks and their country's icy relationship. The clip shows the Dagger rocket and air defense missile system being unleashed from a nuclear-powered missile cruiser in the Barents Sea. More than 20 warships and submarines, plus some 10 aircraft and helicopters practice target training in the air, sea, coast, Russian news channel TV's Zvezda said, in the biggest show of force yet to the West. The Arctic drills were separate to the largest Russian naval exercises in the Pacific since the end of the Cold War, held around the same time. Putin has this year ordered a succession of military exercises across Russia's 11 time zones amid the highest tension between East and West since the collapse of the Soviet Union 3 decades ago. In another move bound to unease Western governments, Russia is due to stage a new test of its deadly new Zircon hypersonic missile. The Zircon, or Tsircon, is a 6,100 miles per hour unstoppable cruise missile that is on track to be used by the Russian military next year. Putin sees the lethal Mach 8 Zircon as his weapon of choice to target American cities in the event of a nuclear conflict, it has been reported. The military maneuver comes as Putin and his U.S. counterpart, President Biden, are set to discuss a range of issues on Wednesday. The men are expected to talk about U.S. concerns on Russian saber-rattling on the Ukrainian border, the imprisonment of Kremlin opponent Alexei Navalny, and Putin's support for Belarusian strongman Alexander Lukashenko. Washington has repeatedly accused Russia of interfering in the 2016 and 2020 U.S. elections. Earlier this year, Biden blacklisted 6 Russian technology companies for carrying out Russian government-directed attempts to influence the 2020 U.S. presidential election and other acts of disinformation and interference. However, Putin called for the U.S. and Russia to work together to fight cyberattacks, saying, "It is our great hope that we will be able to set up this process with our U.S. partners." Biden previously said that he believes Putin is a killer, something that the Russian president denied ever speaking to the American about. Separately, Russia's strategic nuclear forces are this year reported to be conducting more than one military exercise every 2 days. During the exercises led by flagship Peter the Great, air defense teams of the Northern Fleet's Naval Task Force shot down all cruise missiles launched against it during the drills in the Barents Sea. The drills were to test the defenses of the country's Arctic frontiers, said a fleet spokesman. Overall, 8 target missiles were launched towards the Naval Strike Group, which were successfully shot down by the missile cruisers AK-130 and AK-630 artillery systems, Kinzhal, and Osa surface-to-air launchers. Earlier, the ships were ordered to repel high-speed air attacks simulated by Sukhoi Su-24 frontline bombers. On the other hand, senior U.S. military officer has again sounded the alarm about the threat that advanced, very quiet, cruise missile-armed Russian submarines, as well as Chinese ones, increasingly present to the United States. At a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday, U.S. Air Force General Glenn Van Herk, who is head of U.S. Northern Command, and the U.S.-Canadian North American Aerospace Defense Command, told lawmakers that Russia's growing fleet of nuclear-powered Yasin-class guided missile submarines, in particular, are nearly on par with U.S. Navy types in terms of quietness and will present a persistent threat to the American homeland unlike any before within 5 years. He added that, at its current pace of modernization, the Chinese Navy would not be behind for long in terms of similar capabilities. Van Herk made these comments before members of the House Armed Services Committee during a hearing on missile defense on June 15, 2021. The general was one of 5 officials testifying before the Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, the others being Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear and Missile Defense Policy Leonor Tamaro, Missile Defense Agency, MDA, Director Navy Vice Admiral John Hill, U.S. Army Space and Missile Defense Command Head Lieutenant General Daniel Karbler, and U.S. Space Command Chief Space Force Lieutenant General John Shaw. Russia just fielded their second Sev-class submarine, which is on par with ours, Van Herk said at one point, as part of a response to a question about threats that fall below the nuclear threshold that potential adversaries pose to the United States. Within a 5-year period, they'll have 8 to 9 of those submarines, which will be a persistent proximate threat off of our east and west coasts that we haven't had ever in the past. The Sev-class boat Banhurk was referring to was the Kazan, which was formally commissioned into Russian Navy service in May. Kazan is the second submarine in the Project 885 Yasin class, which NATO refers to as the Severodvinsk class after the name of the lead boat. It is also the first boat in a new subclass, known as the Project 885M Yasin M class. Russia has 4 more of the multi-mission Yasin Ms already under construction and is presently planning to build at least 8 boats in this subclass in total. Reported loadouts include up to 40 caliber subsonic cruise missiles, variants of which are intended to be used in anti-ship and land attack roles, as well as differing amounts of other weapons, such as the Onyx supersonic anti-ship cruise missile. The shadowy Zircon hypersonic cruise missile could also be part of its arsenal in the future. The Yasin M design is shorter, by up to around 40 feet, but reportedly still has 8 large payload tubes, allowing it to fire the same mix of existing and future missiles. Reports also say that Kazan and its future sisters lack the large flank-mounted sonar array found on Severodvinsk, but have gained improvements, including to their reactor plant and elsewhere that focus on reducing their acoustic signatures. The Severodvinsk was already understood to be very quiet, something that General Banhurk has now publicly confirmed. Low acoustic signatures make the Yasin and Yasin M class designs, which you can read more about in detail here, very hard to detect and track, and then, in the event of an actual conflict, engage. In the not-too-distant future, 5 to 10 years, China will be in the same position, Banhurk also said during the hearing, referring to similar advanced Chinese submarine developments. This includes the continued development of new variants of the Type 093 Shang class, another modern nuclear-powered type that is reportedly very quiet and can launch cruise missiles from its torpedo tubes. There had been reports that the improved Type 093G version might have VLS cells, but no subsequent evidence has emerged to support this. Russia has previously announced plans to modernize at least one Oscar II class boat, the Irkutsk, with new launchers able to fire the Zircon hypersonic cruise missile. The potential for Yasin and Yasin M class boats, along with older Russian submarines, as well as various types of surface warships, to carry Zircon is part of separate and growing concerns about the threats that missiles able to reach hypersonic speeds present to American forces. The potential difficulty in detecting Russian Yasin and Yasin M class guided missiles submarines, as well as other increasingly quiet designs that Russia and China are developing, combined with the ever more advanced weapons they can carry, look to only be further complicating this overall threat picture. As a result, the situation is increasingly prompting warnings from those with the best available information that America's advantage in key strategic areas is eroding.